Well, what a way to start double elimination, eh? Yep. Hi, my name's Sebastian. This is Vision Denial and the Road to MSI, where I watch all playoff series from all 12 regions that are going to MSI. Yes, including that one. And today we've got Royal Never Give Up RNG versus FunPlus Phoenix FPX. And, did anybody expect how that series went? I didn't. No one seemed to have. Because that was decisive. Very decisive. Like, I don't know how to, like, parse how how phenomenal FunPlus Phoenix went. Like, that was a 3-0. FunPlus Phoenix gets to move on to the winners finals, i.e. the semifinal one, after making through this quarterfinal. It's losers bracket nomenclature is weird. I gotta say that, like, the fact that FunPlus Phoenix got away with doing two 1-4 comps, and they're fantastic at doing 1-4 comps. Like, holy shit. I was. This is like their bread and butter. I don't know how, but like a team can actually play a 1-4 comp, and I'm not going. Is fantastic. But also, they played with such ferocity, and it was really hard to like watch sometimes. And this is to no discredit, because RNG definitely had all of their steps in the right place. They picked compositions that were easy to execute. They picked compositions they could answer 1-4, or the 5v5 compositions they had in the game in the third game. They adapted. They made sure that they weren't doing too many repetitions between them. They even like tried to do the whole switcheroo. Hi, we're gonna do your composition. Psych, no, we're not. We're just taking things that we thought were bad, that or made us have a hard time. Um, this is honestly, I recommend watching this series. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. I don't know if it's my favorite, um, but it's definitely in the top five in terms of like quality and domination. Because like, not at no point did I think either of these teams was weak because of how the game was playing. Like, sometimes you watch a game that goes 3-0, or a series that goes 3-0, and you go, all right, so that means that this team was really, really bad, and so that team did fine. Or that team was really, really, really good against a team that's also really bad. But this isn't the case. This is like, RNG was clearly a very solid team. Like, this is the first series we get to watch from them, right? They'll have at least one more, at least. They might have two. We'll see. Maybe three. Like, this is the losers bracket is weird. And so here's my thought process, right? This was such a dominating show of how to use pressure and pacing to make sure your opponent doesn't know how to answer properly, and to garner the advantages that you need to hit your win conditions, because that's what was needed. They needed to make sure that the games were played fast, quickly, and efficiently, so that whenever, especially in the games 1 and 4, because if they don't, then their 1-4 composition is really easy to answer for. RNG, very smart of them, always finds ways to either answer across the map in the ways that were very subtle, making sure they get vision, they steal away camps, they like minimize the pressure, or they answer towards where they're going for, but only if they know that that will advance their win condition. And that's also the point. They aren't just answering for the sake of answering, they're answering in places where it made sense for them to advance their win condition. And at no point did I think that RNG was wasting any time. I just think that they couldn't keep up. Like, this was like a master class in, hi, we're gonna fuck you right up. Holy Toledo Joe. What what crawled up FPX's butt? Are they like the 7th seed or something? Or this, like they weren't very high up in the ladder. Like they barely qualified, or not barely. There's 10 teams. That's easy to qualify, but they qualified low enough in the ladder that like this was nowhere near my expectations. They were playing pretty well, and this was FPX showed something that I had yet to see in their other series. This was like watching the. I made this comparison in a post for like Russia, where it's like, oh, this was the Globetrotters beating up a basketball team. No, this is like an Olympic level basketball team beating up the varsity college basketball team. Like, this is, oh goodness. Alright, things that I like. RNG had a solid amount of vision throughout all 3 games. They unfortunately couldn't keep up into being able to set up vision denial in any ways that were efficient, and I think it's more of a case of FPX being much better at it. They were really solid at vision denial and had very efficient pockets of vision early in that allowed them to properly keep track of Wei during the early stages. They spent almost their entire time nullifying Wei, which tells me that RNG as a team gets a lot of their leads through the jungle. And you know what? Like I'm not gonna lie, I don't keep up enough with all of the regions on the regular play because that's not possible. So I selectively watch games as I go along through the season just to make sure I keep up with the meta itself. But like, this tells me that not only did FPX like come in with full force saying, hey, this is the best we'll ever play, but they did their research on how to like take apart where their strengths was, right? They played, FPX did 3 things. They played to their win conditions. Perfect. They've been doing that the entire time. They're very solid at it. And it really helps when you have Nuguri on your team. Holy smokes. 2, they identified where the win conditions of RNG are and made sure that it was really hard for them to answer with either nullifying their first moves of FPX or help them gain their own momentum to make sure that RNG's win conditions would go through. Now RNG did well enough to keep up in that way, but FPX was smart enough to make sure that any answers would be either not worth doing or barely even an inconvenience. And 3 is that they identified the point of strengths in the team, especially when it came to Wei and how he interacts with his laners, because Wei felt invisible until the mid game for most of these games. And usually when I see this kind of thing, I don't usually point it out. I haven't pointed out in the videos because if a player feels invisible compared to the rest of the team, I think it has more to do with the fact that either the quality of the team or the fact that the player himself is just kind of existing amongst them, right? But in this case, it was hard to know that Wei was doing anything until the mid to late game, because FPX did everything in their power to make sure that he wasn't doing very much of anything. And I think that's the takeaway. Like I've talked about so far with other regions, like what does their floor look like? This is totally different. This is the ceiling for the LPL for the Chinese region. And that right there was the ceiling for the regular season. And FPX said, no, we're going to break it and go 13 floors up. FPX was the floor at some point. During the regular season, FPX was the floor, qualified, managed to break the ceiling of their region, and then boom. It doesn't matter who, like, qualifies from China, right? I'll see what EDG versus top esports is, right? Like Edward Gaming versus top esports. I'm so happy EDG is back into like a playoff thing, but we'll get there. That's the next playoff series. But like whoever faces off against FPX, that will be like the litmus test for me to see how good this team is, and also like where this region is at, because compared to Korea, the floors are not the same, the ceiling is not the same, and compared to Europe, the floor is like not even, it's a basement unit, let alone all the other regions. Like this is, I don't know. A couple of other things. I do think that if anybody wants to see how our 1-4 composition is played out, because a lot of other regions, their teams try to do 1-4 compositions and it just devolves into a 5v5 thing instead of actually pressuring side lanes. And I've mentioned this, FPX does it great. I think it helps that Nuguri knows what his limits are. What else? I do think it's also really good that FPX thinks about their compositions during the pick bans in relation to what they want to play and in relation to what RNG was going to do. Solid. Honestly, the pick and ban phase and the way that they play 1-4 comps is, if you're going to analyze anything, any of the games that I've talked about, or any of the series that I've talked about, this is the one. Like, this may not be my favorite series overall, but this is the one with, like, the most nuggets of truth. But the one thing I do have to point, the big caveat to all this, is that FPX gets very overzealous. Like, they're not too big for their britches, but more like the ball starts rolling and they just keep going with it, not necessarily realizing if they've already overstepped. And so they get caught out frequently. The difference is that usually they're so far ahead in terms of tempo, not necessarily go, but in terms of tempo, that it's hard for RNG to answer. Like, they'll answer, they'll get a kill, they get caught, they make mistakes, and so they nullified whatever bleeding they were getting. But then at 20 seconds later, they're like, well, FPX is already doing something else across the map. We can't do anything from it. So if there's any point of attack for FPX, is that if I want you guys to not overstep your bounds as much. RNG, I mean, same to you, but that's because you're answering to a really crazy pace. Like, holy smokes. So maybe just don't feed into it. Don't feed into the absolute terror of a pace that is FPX on April 8th or 7th. Yeah, April 7th. Holy smokes, what did they eat? You guys let me know in the comments down below what you think. Next up, like I mentioned, we got Edward Gaming versus Top Esports from China. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.